Shanti. So today I'm here to talk about sound. So it's very appropriate that we started with a nice mantra recitation. Why sound? Why do we talk about sound? Why do we use sound? Sound is something that the yogis, the mystics, people who are trying to unfold their spiritual potential, people who have been trying to merge with spirit in some way, people have used sound since time immemorial. It can take the form of music, or just mantra chanting, or even the simple beating of a drum. Why is it that people have used sound since time immemorial? To the mystic, to the yogi, sound is vibration. Vibration. Sound is vibration. Sound is vibration. And vibration is alive. Anything that vibrates is alive. Life is vibration. Consciousness is vibration. All different states of consciousness are just different qualities, different states of vibration. And it's one thing to know that with your superficial mind. Yeah, everything is vibration. We learned that in school. But it's another thing to have the direct experience of life as vibration. To experience life is life. It's mysticism. Vibration is life. And life is God. And God is life. So sound is God. Sound is another form of energy that the divine manifests in. And you can reach back to the source through any one of those ways that God has provided. One of them is sound, very direct way. And you'll notice that the ears of all the organs, the ears are the closest ones to the center, to the brain. So the mystics, they use sound to steady the mind. Steady the mind. Steady the mind. And they use sound to open the mind. What do we mean by open the mind? You know, in the Muslim countries, they have these people who stand up on tall towers and they call everyone to worship 5 times a day. Beautiful chanting. So I wish I could learn how to do that. I'd like to find a teacher to teach how to sing those chants. They're very special. They use sound to call people to worship. The Jews, they have a horn that they use. It's a ram's horn called the shofar. And they blow that on the high holy days, the special holy days. They use sound, pure vibration, to call people to worship. And the Buddhists, they bang these gongs, these very special bells that they have. They have special families who, for generations, make these unique bells that produce special qualities of vibration, special qualities of sound that will bring you into a meditative state, bring you into a state of mindfulness. And the Christians also. I was in Switzerland a couple of years ago, and up on top of a mountain in Switzerland, and looking down on the valley, and I heard all the bells ringing. It was a Sunday morning. Here I was, a tourist. I didn't remember what day it was. But the sound from those bells, all the different churches all going, I had a kind of a aesthetic experience. Or it was very profound beauty. And I thought, now I know why they have those bells in all those churches, to call people to worship. And all throughout the world, they use sound to call people to worship. Sound brings you in touch with you. Sound brings you in touch with your own divine nature. That's why they use sound. Of course, you can all hear those bells all over town, too. Say, oh, we're late for church. But it's more than that. There's something special about sound that causes the mind to turn within and become steady and still. And sound is also a symbol of God consciousness. Pure sound is a symbol of God consciousness. One of the Hindu deities named Vishnu, he has 4 arms. And in one of his arms, he holds a weapon, a mace. And in the other arm, he holds another weapon, a sudarshan, a disc, a flying disc. But in his other 2 arms, in one hand he holds a flower, a lotus, and in the 4th arm he holds something very unusual. He holds a conch shell. The Hindus, when they begin their pujas, their worship ceremonies, they blow the conch. Do we have a conch here? Where's that conch? Well, some other time, I don't see it. You can blow the conch. The conch, of all the instruments, makes a sound that's very close to the sound Om, like that. Om. If you ever listen to a conch sometime, it makes the sound Om. 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 So the Hindus, since time immemorial, have used the conch shell when they start their ceremonies. Now, why is sound, not only is sound a symbol of God, but sound is God. Vibration is the divine vibration. All vibrations are the divine vibration. One of the reasons that sound is so special is that it's all-pervading. Sound doesn't limit itself. You know, when you want to read a book, you have to look at the book. You have to have the book in front of you. But sound is not like that. You can listen to someone talk wherever they are. They can even be in the next room and you can overhear their conversation by accident. Sound has a quality that we call all-pervading. Just like spirit, just like Brahman, the self, Atma. Sound permeates all space. And so the ancient yogis talked about 2 concepts, nada and bindu. A bindu is a point. For example, at the feet of Buddha there's a small candle, and from where I sit, there's just a small point of light. A specular light source, they would say. Just a speck. But that light is sending out electromagnetic radiation into all space. And if there were no roof here, you could see it from the moon if you had a big enough telescope. So whenever we have a point, we have a wave or waves. And whenever we have waves, we know that they must have come from a point. Say if you have a guitar, in order to make those sound waves, you have to pluck the guitar. At some point, there's a point of contact. And even if you blow the conch shell, there's a point there, the mouthpiece, where the lips are vibrating. And from there, shoot out waves. It's sort of like a wave projector. So sound has these 2 parts, wave and point. And we also have 2 parts to us also. We have an affinity with sound. An affinity. We have a point which we call ego, or me, or you for you, or I for I. It's an infinitely small point. And when you look at that point real close, it kind of disappears. Who is this me anyway? The me that got up and put on the makeup and combed the hair and shaved and got in the clothes and walked around. Who is that me? If you get into Vedantic inquiry or mystical philosophy, and they ask the question, who am I? What is this I? It's sort of like peeling an onion. You keep getting rid of the layers and layers, and then in the end, there's really sort of just space inside. It's nothing substantial there. But there is a point. It's called me. You can't really find it, but it's there. It's a concept. And coming out from that point of ego, are waves. If you see the aura, you'll see that self, spirit, extends out into all space. That's why if you're quiet, you can attune to the cosmic mind, the Akashic records. You can hear the thoughts of another at a distance. You can know the future. You can know the past. If you're a completely awakened yogi, you have the yogic siddhis, the power. They're not really powers. Siddhis are just the nature of the self. The self is all-pervading. So it's nothing special for the self to know at a distance what's going on, or to feel at a distance what's in the heart of another person. We call that sensitivity, but it's really the nature of the soul to be that way. So we have our own point and our own waves, just like nada and bindu. Bindu means point, nada means waves or sound. And one of the names for this mantra, Om, they call it the pranava nada, the eternal sound, the special sound, Om. The reason that sound is so special is because our nature is vibration, just like that. In fact, there's a scripture called Sri Guru Gita, the song of the Guru. And in there's a verse that we sing every once in a while. And just listen to the Sanskrit for a second now that we're talking about sound. We're not talking so much about mantra now, but just about sound. Well, listen to Sanskrit for a second as sound, just abstract sound. Chaitanyam shastvatam shantam nirakaram niranjanam nada bindu kaladhiram tasmai shri gurave namaha. Nada bindu kaladhiram. Nada bindu kaladhiram. The verse says, to the Guru I bow. That Guru is absolute consciousness, Chaitanyam, Shantam, and peace. Nirakaram Niranjanam, who can never be spoiled or stained. Nada bindu kaladhidam. The self, the Guru within, is beyond nada and bindu. It goes beyond the wave and the point and time. Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. To that Guru I bow. To that self, the spirit. So even in this old scripture they're saying that the spirit has the nature of going beyond even wave and particle, that it is wave and particle at the same time. And the modern physicists around the turn of the century, when they were looking into the nature of things, they were looking at electrons and subatomic particles, and they found that sometimes you could say that electrons behave like particles. You know, they're like these little balls, electrons going through the wires. And then at other times, they behave like waves of light. And depending on how you wanted to look at them, you could say, well, these things are really waves, or you could say they're really particles. But you could never have them both a wave and a particle at the same time. And so the physicists around the turn of the century, they were very puzzled with that, and they said, well, it must be one or the other, this thing. And eventually they could never prove that it was one or the other, and so they just have this concept of the wave-particle duality, that when you really get down and look at things, electrons, protons, neutrons, and subatomic particles, that their essence is both. Kind of funny that if you look at energy, if you look at vibration, it behaves in both ways. Something like people. You can't just bring a couple of people in here. Anytime you do, one's going to have a male body, one's going to have a female body. You can never just bring a person along. Have you ever noticed that? They always come in too, and then you'd say, well, what is a person? Is it a male or a female anyway? I mean, what really is a person? And that's Western dualistic mind at its best, asking silly questions like that. But the spiritual perspective allows for duality and says, oh yes, that is the nature of things. Sometimes it's this way, sometimes it's the other way. And that is really the essence of sound, the essence of meditation also. In meditation, you bring your mind down to a point, centered. And then from that point, through your meditative awareness, you can reach out into all space. Call that samadhi, or bliss. The wave and the point become one. The self becomes everything. So sound has an infinite nature. We have an infinite nature. Sound has a point, a finite nature. We have a finite nature. We have a point. We're going back and forth. When I was in school, I used to play the trumpet, and they make the brass players sit in the back of the orchestra. Because the way the trumpet is, it sends out a very penetrating kind of sound. They want you to hear the oboes and the flutes, the violins. So they always put the brass section in the back, next to the drums, next to the percussionists. It's all, even the music, it's all waves, different qualities of vibration. And they had these timpanis back there. Have you ever seen timpanis, kettle drums? Big drums made out of very thin copper with very thin skins on the top. And they were so sensitive. They'd be tuned, say, to an A or a B. If someone in the other end of the band or the orchestra were to play a note on the clarinet, someone who would play an A, the timpani would start rattling, would start vibrating. They call that sympathetic resonance. Vibration over there is affecting a vibration over here at a distance. And so they had these covers on top of the timpanis to keep them from making that noise. And every once in a while, the band leader or the orchestra conductor would get upset. He'd say, put the covers on those things. They're rattling. They're being affected by these other vibrations, so to speak. Well, keep that in your mind. Now I have a story to tell you. A couple of weeks ago, I'm a computer programmer, and I was working on a piece of software. I had a little question, and in the computer world, you have different kinds of programmers. Some are more technical than the others, and so I had to call up, to solve this problem, I had to call up one of these technical types, the systems programming people. So I got on the phone and spoke to so-and-so. And I said, I'm having a problem. I can't find the pointer to this file table and the so on, technical jargon. Pointer in the file table. And so she said to me, let me have a look at it. And when she said, like that on the phone, I just about went out of my body. There was something about that just got me at the right time, all this meditation and mantra and everything. After all these years, nothing ever happened. One day, talking to the lady at systems programming, we're talking about something very technical, and she goes, let me get back to you. And to me, it sounded like she was saying for about a half hour. And I had to push to come back and say, yeah, let me look into it and call me back when you get a second, okay? I'm busy. Bang. That was the end of the conversation. But afterwards, I closed my eyes. I tried to meditate. Come on, let's get back there. That was good. Didn't work. They call that in Japanese, they call that a satori. You ever heard that? Satori. Is that right? Is that how you pronounce? Oh, satori. An awakening. Just a temporary glimpse into the nature of things. And what is the nature of things? Everything is everything is love, everything is thought, everything is essence, everything is energy, everything is vibration. And I had a temporary experience of that. She was God talking to me. That was the voice of God saying, like that. When you read in these books that to the yogi everything is God, you think, well, that's nice. What do they mean, everything is God? I've seen in some of the spiritual books that are for sort of kindergartners like us, they'll They'll say, to the yogi, everyone is God. And then they have an illustration. There's a guy sitting there, and there's a little picture of God in his chest, and there's a cow over there with a little picture of God like that, some guy, and then there's an airplane flying overhead, and there's God there. And it looks kind of silly. You think, well, that they're just trying to show that everything's important in life, and it all means something to somebody. Everybody's mother loves them, that kind of thing. But that's not what they're saying. They're saying that everything, every particle, every wave is still vibrating from the original thought of the Creator. Everything is God. Every ah, every burp, every belch is one of those Chinese gongs vibrating. Every little baby burping. You did it right on schedule. No more? Okay. Every sound is God. And sometimes when the mind is still, we can experience that ourselves. To the yogi who has spent a life of meditation and dedication to attunement, they get those experiences more often, like maybe every couple of minutes, instead of once every 10 years like me on the phone. That's Satori, the awakening. And you know that timpani had a cover on it so that it would keep that from happening. We all have a sort of a cover too. You know, when the baby is born, first few weeks I think, there's a soft spot on the head called the fontanelle. That probably means a little fountain, fontanella, you know, in Italian. Little fountain. Interesting way. Why are they calling that hole in your head a little fountain? Funny that they would call it that. Why not a little hole? Or hole in your head. But they call it a little fountain. In Sanskrit that's called Brahmaranda, the gate of Brahma, or Brahman. There's a hole there. On the timpani, they had it closed off. They put the cover on. And maybe while I was on the phone, by accident, my hole kind of opened up for a second. And she kind of blasted through it. I had a satori. So let's have a little meditation for a moment again. Let's sit straight. And let's take the lid off of our timpani for a moment. And now we'll just do a visualization. Close the eyes, take a breath. Visualization is a very powerful technique. Just imagine in your own way there's a column of light above you coming down from heaven, coming down from the space, outer space, from the sun, from the realm of the stars. And that there's that little fontanelle in your head, that little opening. And imagine now there's a funnel there. The funnel is opening just a little bit and letting that energy pour down into you. You can visualize a column of light penetrating down into the head, lighting up the brain. And your body is absorbing this divine current, divine energy. As you open more, become more subtle, become more receptive. This current floods down the spine, down the arms, and vivifying, healing, nourishing all the cells. You can feel the tingling of prana filling out into the body, out into all the abdominal organs. And with every breath, your body becomes a little bit more subtle, attuned to this energy coming from God, coming from heaven. Fills down the spine into your legs, out into the extremities, the feet, the toes. The whole body is just gathering divine energy, accumulating it for a moment. Now, because we all have that all-pervading nature, we can also send out this energy, divine energy, into all space. And let's repeat that sound, ah, together 3 times. And as we do, just imagine that your body is being flooded with this pure vibration of sound, and that it's going out and helping others all around. And let's repeat the sound ah 3 times. Now quietly, just sit again, just for a moment. So, sometimes when you recite the mantra, or even the simple thing like ah or oh, you may have an insight, a satori, into the nature of things. The self is vibration. Spirit is vibration. Just at a special quality of vibration. Now I'd like to tell another story. Back in the Tang Dynasty, you all remember the Tang Dynasty? About 600 AD, back in China, ancient China, in the early part of the Piscean Age, people had a great desire to go within and contact God within through meditation. And so throughout Europe and the Orient, there were vast systems of monasteries. A lot of people lived in monasteries, spent their whole life in contemplation through meditation, quiet meditation. And in China they call that Chan. So, you know, they have in Sanskrit, there's a word dhyana, which means meditation. But as the teachings traveled across Asia, this word dhyana, you know, they came to China. Chinese, all the letters are, all the words are one syllable. So they couldn't say dhyana, so they said, well, let's call it something close. We'll call it Chan. And then, that's kind of close. Then when it came over to Japan, Japanese don't speak Chinese. They can't say that. That's not in their alphabet, so they called it Zen, like that. And the Americans came over and got it from the Japanese, and they, oh, Zen. Yeah, Zen. But it all means meditation. So back in the Tang Dynasty, there was a great Chang meditation center with many monks meditating all their lives, meditating. And there was an abbot at this monastery who was deeply enlightened, as they would say, very deeply enlightened. And he was getting elderly, and he decided, I am tired, I must go into a long retreat, and I must pass on the staff, I must pass on the abbothood to the monk here who can prove his enlightenment the deepest. I want to find the monk who is the most deeply enlightened, and I want to find one to be abbot who can demonstrate his enlightenment or her enlightenment. So, put up a big notice. The abbot is going to be convening in the Buddha Hall. In these monasteries, the Buddha Hall is always the largest building. And there in front of the big gold Buddha sat the Chinese Zen master, Chan master. And the monks came up and said their thing before him. Each one demonstrated the depth of their enlightenment. So the first one comes up, Chinese style, bows before the master very sincerely. And he says, I would like to demonstrate my enlightenment. Life is just vast emptiness. There's nothing. It's all nothingness. It's empty like space. All the monks They're all having satori's, they're all, wow. All the other ones are sitting there very quietly. Oh! They're all looking to the abbot. Abbot is sitting in deep meditation. You have meditated deeply, but you're still using your surface mind. Go back and meditate some more. All the monks thought, oh my, that was pretty profound. The next monk comes up, gives his thing. The teacher again says, surface mind, surface mind. When will you learn to meditate? These are men and women that have been meditating all their lives, deeply. Another one comes up and says, everything is Buddha. Buddha is everything. Everything is Buddha. Everyone's stunned. They look to the abbot. The abbot says, silly goon, you're using your monkey brain. When are you going to learn to meditate? Go sit and meditate. And they, yes, sir. Finally, an old, crotchety old lady, nun, gets up. Everyone else is finished. She gets up. And everybody says, a nun? Shaved head? The ladies look very unusual with shaved heads. Very quietly, humbly, gets up, folds palms, sits for a moment, and then very abruptly gets up, walks up to the door, slams it shut, bang, like that, and walks through. Immediately the Chan master goes like that and he says, I have found my successor. He stands up, he walks out. And that's the end of the story. So a lot of times people think, these Buddhist stories, these Zen stories, they're so kooky. They're so inscrutable. And I don't claim to say I know the answer to this story, but I have my interpretation of it. And I think she was demonstrating her enlightenment. She was saying that everything is alive, even the slamming of a door. That's the sound of the Buddha. That is essence, that is spirit, that is life. Bang! Everything is alive. The way to demonstrate the enlightenment is to do that. Everything has a Buddha nature. Everything is God. Bang! Like that. Without the surface mind, without the, well, enlightenment is like this, enlightenment is like that. So enlightenment, meditation, is to begin to behold God in everything. And we can do it even in simple ways. Just listening to an airplane go overhead. Sometime you listen to that airplane go overhead, it'll go, rum. So I think I'd like to close with that. And Ray, maybe you would like to, the musicians could play some music, and maybe you would like to, if people are interested, can I do it like that? Ray would like to offer a blessing this morning with the oil, and people could come up and receive a blessing and quietly meditate while the musicians play some music. And let's just close first with a Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Is that good? Okay. And again, this time experience the mantra Om Shanti Shanti. There are these different sounds. Om, Ah, E. And then they put them together. Om Shanti. Those are sound vibrations. Project these pure vibrations out and send them to someone who you love, someone who needs peace now.
Nandalala Tere Pyare Nam